we tend to think when we start equating humility with humiliation that somehow we now can't speak up for ourselves, right? Um, what I argue is that humility isn't about becoming a doormat, right? It's not about being humiliated. It is about saying, why would we even allow a society where people are made to be doormats? I mean, in other words, true humility would make me want to look out for my neighbor, right? And make sure that people aren't marginalized. Pride, says I'm better than. There's another term that we don't use very much, but it's in Philippians chapter 2. It's vainglory. That's the old way the King James would translate it. But vainglory can be defined as wanting to have the show of superiority, even if I'm not actually superior. So the prideful person says, I'm superior. The vainglorious person says, I want you to think I'm superior, right? So they're overlap. Those are the attitudes that are being condemned, right? So humility doesn't is basically saying, I'm not even going to play that game. I can state the facts. I can say who I am. I can declare what God has done in my life, but I can do this in a way that doesn't even get at me trying to articulate that I'm better than or superior to. None of that. I think a good test for us is to ask, how do we feel, and be honest with ourselves, when somebody doesn't acknowledge my accomplishments? And maybe they forget. I've been in situations where, people have introduced me or something, and they maybe get something wrong about my background or say something that is just not that doesn't fully respect the stuff that I've done. And I think it used to bother me, and I thought, well, Dennis, why is that bothering you? And so the question, I think, sometimes is not so much can I say what my accomplishments are, but to ask myself, how do I feel when my accomplishments aren't acknowledged, and what kind of context? And there's a way of being that acknowledges what God has done in my life that doesn't have to be arrogant or vainglorious.